Hello, everyone. Hello to Los Angeles. Good morning, actually, to Los Angeles, and good afternoon or good evening to Athens. Welcome to this event, which is organized in the context of the exhibition You and AI that opened on Thursday in Athens at Pedion to Areos Park, and also online on the Stegi website of the Onassis Cultural Center, again in Athens. I'm Bill Balaskas. I'm a Greek artist based in London and currently exhibiting in Athens a collaborative piece with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. First of all, I should say that if you're joining us, then please keep your mics turned off. I should mention that this session is recorded, and there are going to be chances to ask questions at the end and also to post in the chat space. I will very briefly introduce my encounter with the work of the coalition and talk a little bit about the work so that I provide some context. And then the main part of the event will be run by the coalition members who have quite a lot of things to share with us, actually. So my encounter with the work of the coalition happened more than a year ago. I think perhaps it might have been 2 years, when I read a piece in LA Times about the successful court case that they had. And I instantly became very interested in getting to know better what the campaigns have been about, particularly because my interests are very much in the area of politics, both as an artist, but also as an academic. My background is not artistic, purely artistic. So my first degree is in economics. So I'm very much interested in that, but also I'm interested in technology. And over the last few years, I've been spending quite some time in Australia, where I've had the privilege to get to know Aboriginal culture, talk with Aboriginal elders, and learn from close up about colonialism, post-colonialism, and see how deep those debates and problems are. I mean, it was something that I was sensitive to, or suspecting, but then at the same time, I think it's very important to be having those conversations in proximity, and in order to be able to understand how white supremacism is functioning on many different levels and many different parts of the world. So I got to know the work of the coalition around predictive policing, and I was particularly interested when it comes to thinking about algorithms as black boxes. So not knowing really what's happening inside. But even if we do know, the question of who actually decides what constitutes the entry data is a very good question. Who and how decides how the results are being interpreted, and who and how decides what action is being taken based on this interpretation. So based on that, and the fact that I had received an invitation to participate in this exhibition, the exhibition You and I, through the algorithmic lens, I initiated a dialogue last summer while thinking about the exhibition, starting from Hamid Khan. And it has been a very, I feel, very inspiring and very productive dialogue for me. And as a result of that, we decided to work together on a project which is inspired by the report Before the Bullet Hits the Body by the coalition from 2018. And the outcome of which was the work, an incredible amount of work by the community, for the community, and also for the world. I mean, the result of the report that the coalition prepared, and the result of that was also the dismantlement of the predictive policing programs of LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department. And so, because predictive policing and algorithmic policing might be something which is not that prevalent at the moment in Europe, and definitely not in Greece, but we very much live in an interconnected world, and especially an interconnected world via technology. So I thought, from that point of view, it was very meaningful to be talking about those issues on a global level, really. So the work that we have created, co-conceived, I would say, has two components. One is an installation at Pedion to Areos Park, which, as I said, is the main park in Athens, and a curated presentation of the coalition's work on the website of the Stegi Cultural Center. And I'm going to show you a few images so that you can get a sense of how what the exhibition, the work looks like. I'm going to try to share my screen, so bear with me for a second. So here we have photos of the installation as it looks like. This is the algorithm that is at the epicenter of the work that the coalition did around before the bullet hits the body report, so or a key component of that, I should say. And it has been written on the central square of the park. This is shot from a drone. This is a closer image of it. You can see the scale is quite large. So it's 22 meters, which I believe it's 72 feet in length, so quite large scale, very prominent. And here are some more photos of it, where you can get a better sense of the scale. But for me, the image that I find more interesting, but also hopeful, is this last image here, which was shot, I believe, earlier today, which shows kids playing on the central square on the algorithm. And it's very hopeful because those children, while playing on this space, and all those diverse communities that live in the city center of Athens, will read the labels that have been put around the square, and will learn about the work of the coalition. And they will be able, if they have a smartphone, to scan the QR codes and go directly to the website of the coalition and the website of the museum, and get to know what does predictive policing mean, and how does the veneer of science often used in order to hide really sinister policies and the deep divisions that exist in different societies around the world. So that's the one component. The other component is the website of the museum. So this is the website now. I hope that you're able to see it. So we have some documentation of the work, which is a photo, and then this is obviously the ad for today's event. We have a description of the work, and then further down we have 3 documentaries from different media sources. So we have Wired, The Economist, and CBC, where predictive policing is explained to some extent, at least. And all those reports also feature the work of the coalition, and there are different explanations about all the campaigns and the activities of the coalition. Then we have the report before the bullet hits the body, which can be downloaded in its entirety from this link here, which also obviously gives the lends the title to the work, to the collaboration. And then we have another project by the coalition, which is the Stalker State. Here we have the link in order for people to access the project, but also an infographic that really shows all the intersections, if you like, between the private and the public sector when it comes to different surveillance methodologies and systems of oppression, which is really, really revealing and interesting. Further down, we have the presentation of the coalition at the LA Police Commission's public hearings on data-driven evidence-based policing, which happened in 2018, the same year of the report before the bullet hits the body. Then an article in LA Times, which might have been one of the articles to which I encountered the work of the coalition. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but it's a very strong article, and also very strong imagery in terms of what it signifies. And then we have a link to the one of the zines of the coalition and the timeline And then finally, I thought it was really appropriate to finish with not what happens before the bullet hits the body, which is the subject of today's presentation and today's discussion, but rather what happens when the bullet hits the body. And we finish with the public statement of Hazel Ford, mother of African-American, who was shot dead by 2 police officers in 2014 in Los Angeles. And it's this kind of police brutality that is explained to a large extent through the work of the coalition and through the dismantling predictive policing and showing how algorithmic policing and structures are able to control people's lives and exert extreme pressure and damage communities. The final thing I should say, going again at the beginning of the website about the installation itself, is that the color of the mural on the square is inspired by the Black Lives Matter campaigns, which appeared in different roads across the US using yellow color slogans and campaign messages. So this is a reference also to that, and it's a very well known, at least on visual level, it's a very well known symbol of Black Lives Matter campaigns, but also very well known in Greece, I should say. So although we don't have predictive policing and this context of suppression by algorithms, still we're very much familiar with what has been happening in the States. I'm going to stop sharing just to mention a couple of extra things before I pass to the coalition. What I would like to say is that I see this collaboration and this project as and today's event actually has quite a unique opportunity to know about the work of the coalition, to know about the reports before the bullet hits the body, and even more importantly, to know about the reality on the ground at the neighborhoods of LA. So before I give the floor to Jamie Garcia and to the coalition, to introduce yourself and our speakers, and we're going to watch a video actually first. I would like to thank very much Hamid Khan, Jamie Garcia, and all the members of the coalition for the generosity, their trust, but also I would like to thank the curator of the show, Irini Papadimitriou, for embracing this project from day one, really, and also the whole team at Stegi in Athens for making it happen. So on that note, thank you, and Jamie and all the members of the coalition, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
We have built a culture of resistance to these programs.
Victory for a really small grassroots organization. As you mentioned, their name is Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. They had a news conference that wrapped up about an hour ago, but they won this case in Superior Court back in October. They chose today to talk about it because today is International Human Rights Day, and they say that what the LAPD is violating is basic human rights.
It does feel like a victory. Anytime that you win a groundbreaking lawsuit, it is a victory, definitely. And it gives us more information for us to help families as we try to determine what has happened and why it happens, knowing where laser zones are, even knowing more and more about what people are on the list. These things are important.
The power we have built as a community has been tremendous.
How do we say that data will be policing? Shut it down!
Chief would dare say it was just an experiment.
it was just an experiment. The thing that he calls an experiment for us is ways in which we have to save our lives.
We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Okay, enough.
It is our duty to win.
I'm going to recess. We're going to recess and clear the room, and then we will finish with the media.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Garcia, and I am a part of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I've been with the coalition for almost 10 years now, and I'm also a registered nurse. Today, we're very excited to share our work, and I'm really excited for everybody to meet our team. So we're going to each spend a few minutes talking about the work, but also introducing ourselves. So very quickly, my other hat I wear is I'm a registered nurse in the community of East Los Angeles in California. And I'm going to start by sharing a slideshow. So just bear with me for a moment as I bring it up. So I want to start by showing our logo, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. You can see that it's a badge with attached with it are closed circuit television cameras, large ears and an antenna, just kind of emphasizing how police are transitioning into surveillance as a form of social control. I want to start by saying that the coalition essentially came to challenge LAPD and to form itself, really resisting against post 9/11 counterterrorism and counterinsurgency tactics that were being integrated into domestic law enforcement. One of the major changes that happened was when the Intelligence Reform Terrorism Prevention Act in 2004 forced the president to create what is called the information sharing environment, or what the coalition calls is the stalker state. And through this information sharing environment, what the state wanted to create was a way for information to be shared very easily amongst private and public sectors. And so this really gets into, how do they do this? Why are they doing this? And what is the impact? And one of the things in the culture of is that they wanted domestic law enforcement to be the eyes and the ears for the federal government to prevent, and that's something I'm going to keep coming back to, which is this to prevent any kind of terrorist or criminal activity. So we're actually going to get into how police now are formulating ways to actually like criminalize thought and criminalize, what you may do. So, so part of this, two major things that are really important for us to kind of understand and concepts that are important for us to grasp so we can fight back is the idea of data mining. So data mining is the way that information is collected on us. And so another image and pop ed tool the coalition created was something called the architecture of surveillance. And around the architecture of surveillance, you can see the types of technologies that LAPD uses to data mine, to collect data on people at massive amounts of levels. Towards the bottom, you can see technology that's called a stingray, which intercepts phone communications. You can see a symbol called ALPR, which is automatic license plate readers that they set up to capture your license plate as you drive through communities. Drones, which are we know as the larger drones that have massacred communities through the United States bombing, but also are at a smaller level starting to be used to surveil communities. So the coalition essentially came together in 2011 around a program that started nationally called the Suspicious Activity Reporting Program. And that program essentially legitimized and codified racial profiling. Component of it that I want to really talk about, and I'm going to stop screen sharing for right now, is this idea of what causes suspicion? What is the definition of suspicion? So a suspicion was defined as observed behavior reasonably indicative of pre-operational planning. So essentially what that meant is that it's watching your behavior and reasonably indicative, which means there's a concern that you're doing something, right? A concern based on the police officer's ideas that you are pre-operationally planning, thinking about doing something. So, so really what we felt like this is behavioral surveillance, which is a really important concept to understand. And this is also basically being used as a way to start observing people, to start indicating that they're criminal. And really, we're going to talk today about how these this kind of policing is intersecting with gentrification and the continual banishment and displacement of people. And now I'm going to turn it over to my co-partner and a fighter in this program in fighting back against predictive policing. I'm going to pass to Courtney Echols, and she's going to talk a little bit about predictive policing.
Hey, thanks, Jamie. I am Courtney Echols. I'm with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I've been with the coalition for, I guess, going on 5 years now. And then I am also a PhD candidate in criminology, law, and society at UC Irvine, where I'm also in the law school program. And then I'll just jump right in, Jamie, if you want to pull up the. Thank you. Yeah, so in 2016, we launched the fight against predictive policing in Los Angeles. And at that time, LAPD had 2 predictive policing programs in place. One of them was LASER and the other one was PredPol. And so just a bit about these programs in order to provide context around our work and the things that folks are gonna talk about later on. So in 2009, LAPD started what they called Operation LASER. And LASER is an acronym that stands for Los Angeles Strategic Extraction and Restoration Program. And LASER is both a person and place-based predictive policing program that they claimed it was analogous to medical surgery, with the premise to target with laser-like precision community members that LAPD had designated as persons of interest, in the same way, right, that a medical doctor uses modern technology to remove tumors. And that is the quote you see here that was pulled from documents we had obtained through the Public Records Act request that we had filed. And then, Jamie, if you want to go to the next slide. So again, LASER is both a person-based and place-based predictive policing program. So essentially, laser zones, or what they called laser zones, were created as these areas for extreme crime suppression, and then people were labeled chronic offenders and that were in these areas, and then they were targeted for tracking and surveillance. So essentially, LAPD would choose an area to target by looking at past crime data. And then these areas that they decided to target is what they called laser zones. And so once LAPD has targeted a laser zone, right, they increase patrols, they increase surveillance in the communities within that area. And then within laser zones, LAPD also identifies specific addresses, which they call anchor points. Jamie, if you want to go to the next slide. or essentially crime generators. So these are addresses or locations that LAPD is saying generates or is responsible for creating crime. And then once they identify a location as an anchor point, they then target that location for even further surveillance. And then they also will target these locations for evictions and abatements. They'll essentially collude with the city attorney through a program called the Citywide Nuisance Abatement Program to again evict or abate these locations. And so some of what we uncovered, right, is that some of these locations that LAPD deemed anchor points, which again, they defined as crime generators. So they're essentially saying these locations are responsible for creating crime. Some of these locations included, encampments of unhoused folks, churches, USC Hospital, right, the Los Angeles Family Housing Shelter, Fairfax High School, along with California State University Northridge. And so again, these are LAPD is saying that these places are responsible for generating crime. And then Jamie, you want to go to the next slide? And then the second component of laser is the person-based aspect. So within these laser zones, LAPD would use a point system to identify individuals who they then target for additional enforcement efforts. So to determine who to target, they essentially assign points to people, and then those people with the highest points are labeled chronic offenders, again, who they then target for additional enforcement. So according to this point system, right, 5 points if the individual is identified as a gang member, 5 points if the individual is on parole or probation, 5 points if they've had an arrest with a handgun, and so on. And then from that, they would create, again, what they called chronic offender bulletins, which looks like similar to a most wanted poster, which is what you see here. And then LAPD is instructed to find these individuals, to surveil them, stop them, frisk them, detain them, arrest them. And so they would create about 50 of these per division, but they would also have backups to replace those once those individuals were displaced or in custody. And then Jamie, next slide. And then the second predictive policing program LAPD was using at the time was called PredPol. So according to Jeff Branningham, one of the creators of the program, he was quoted as saying criminal offenders are essentially hunter-gatherers. They forage for opportunities to commit crimes. The behaviors that a hunter or gatherer uses to choose a wildebeest versus a gazelle are the same calculations a criminal uses to choose a Honda versus a Lexus. And so again, this is the co-creator of PredPol, and PredPol is a location-based predictive policing technology, and it's based on a statistically driven model, which is what you see on the right-hand side, that's used to predict clusters of earthquake shocks. So essentially on the right-hand side, right, the short-term component are these little, I don't know if you can see my arrow, I guess not. The short-term component of the model, right, it's short-term because it weighs more recent crimes more heavily in predictions. And then this offsets the other part of the model by allowing the model to respond to more recent trends. And this first part of the model, this is the long-term component. It's long-term because it's based on historical average rates of crime in the spot. And then it weighs all events that have happened equally, regardless of when they happened. And then the output is what you see on the left-hand side. This is the expected rate of crimes or the hotness of the spot. And the hotness of the spot is the sum of the short and long-term components of the model. And so essentially, this output is what is then given to police on patrol. If you want to go to the next slide, Jamie. And that is the mission sheet that you see here on your left. So again, this is essentially what one of those mission sheets look like that the patrol officers are given. So essentially predictive policing, in effect, it really sets into motion the criminalization of spaces in Los Angeles, spaces that are predominantly Black and brown spaces. And so that was just a little bit about the programs. I know I ran through that quite fast, but we'll have time for questions at the end if there's any, but I'm going to turn it over to my comrade now.
So Dogon, if you can introduce yourself.
First and foremost, revolutionary greetings to everybody. And thank you for having us, for allowing us the space to share Poe people's struggles and fights we are actively engaged with in 2021 here in America, right? As poor and oppressed people, we must realize that our struggles and fight are the same, even though we are a continent apart, right? We are the same because we face the same oppression, right? And we suffer from the same oppression, the same gentrification, the same police brutality, the same political neglect, the same gentrification and criminalization and murder, right? The only difference is when they do it to me, they do it with an American accent. And when they do it to you, they do it with a Greece accent, right? We are the same, right? So today we need to unite our struggle, right? Under the people struggling, create a fight back, right? All power to the people. My name is General Dogon. I'm a people's organizer with the Los Angeles Community Action Network, right? It's an organization on Skid Row, which is one of the last Black communities in the city, one of two, right? We got Negro Hills, what we call Baldwin Hills, and then we got Skid Row, which is a place where Poe folks is at, right? Skid Row is a community, right? It's 80% Black, 40 to 60% of Skid Rows have some form of a medical disability, about 13 to 15,000 residents. About 90% of us living under the poverty level, right, on Skid Row. And Skid Row, my community, was originally created as a containment zone, right, which explains why Skid Row sits in what's called the warehouse district, right? It's where the city warehouse all its old service vehicles and equipment. It's also where the city warehouse all its unfavorable citizens, right? They say no matter what your needs are, right, we got you. Right? If you homeless, you need housing, we got a shelter bed for you right here. If you hungry, you need something to eat, we got a sandwich here in the shelter for you, right? If you need help, we got a rehab for you right here. No matter what your problems is, we can help you right here. You ain't got to go nowhere, right? We got you, right? The city imprisoned us, right, in our own community, right, by using so-called high technology to collect data on us and monitor us, right, to help them imprison. They imprison us in our own community. Sometimes that's mentally and physically, right? A lot of people think you gotta have bars to be in prison, but no, they imprison us in our own communities by using technology and other deciphered vices, understand me, that we're gonna go through, right, to imprison us in our own community. Well, residents, you know, you don't even want to come out their own house. You're in prison in your own house, right? Especially when gentrification comes to town, right? The program changes, right? And it creates a new fight back, right? The upper gentry class becomes the new people in the community, right? They displace these old people out of the community, right? They take away our culture, our identity. They take away our stores, what we do in the community. I take away our parts and stuff like that, right? The way our livelihood is set up, right? We become some like outcasts in our own community, right? So Skid Row, instead of the city, right, giving Skid Row what we need, right, as a poor and oppressed community, you know what I'm saying, to rise up and to prosper, you know what I'm saying, we get hit with other stuff like militarized police, right, initiatives, like the broken windows policing theory, right, safer cities initiative, right, and we get broken political promises, right, we get high-tech cameras put in our community that's used for spying and monitoring and documenting our every step as we walk to and from our own house, right? It creates, you know, the city, I always say this, the city loves creating lines of division, you know what I'm saying? Those lines of division, you know, are often turned into laser zones, right? Anchor spots, buffer zones, right? And other kind of lines of division that's created, right? Just draw right through your community, right through your neighborhood, right? Hot spots are created, you know what I'm saying? Prayer poles created, red zones, right? It's like I would say, fear, intimidation is put in the community residence where people are scared to go out your house because you don't know if you're gonna come back or not, right? Community policing is intensified to the point to where, you know, you're being policed like this on steroids, right? your community comes a test tube, you know what I mean, for all kind of city and government experiments and stuff like that, right? Because they dealing with poor and oppressed people, you know, they feel that, your life is expandable. It don't mean nothing, right? Technology, policing, and gentrification is the new tactics, right? That's being waged against people, right? To move us out of our own community, right? They want us to believe that it's ISIS, the Taliban, or some terrorist that's coming in, taking over, that's tearing up the place, that's doing all this stuff, right? But no, the people that's terrorizing, understand me, my community, right, is the people that we pay taxes to, the people that's took an oath to serve and protect us. It's the very same people that's using military tactics that destroy us, that's run us out of our community, or even less to murder us. You know, to the day where in our community across the city of Los Angeles, 5 homeless people are dying a day due to political neglect. And that's their numbers. We say, if they say 5 people a day, then we know 10 or 15 a day is dying, right? So what do? We're forced in a position that we got to fight back, right? And so that's why we're here today, you know, instead me to talk about that fight back, you know, instead me and how we become international partners in this fight. Because like I say, we're in the same fight together. The only thing we got to do is unite the fight and the struggle. All power.
Thank you so much, Dogon. Thank you so
welcome.
much. I'm going to pass now to Brother Pancake.
Well, I'm Brother Pancake. I'll say good morning to some, good afternoon to some, and good evening to some. Brother Pancake, I'm a community organizer, community activist, volunteer with Los Angeles Community Action Network, and also a member of Stop LAPD Spine. Skid Row. There are people living on Skid Row. First of all, Skid Row is a community. You know, I hear some folks say living on Skid Row, you know, but should be a term that's living in Skid Row, because Skid Row is a community. There's people. And the challenges of folks is living on Skid Row. Some are mental issues, like Dogon said, also the physical disabilities, and that's been failed by the system, And folks are demonized and criminalized. And, you know, the criminal justice system, you know, it's like a revolving door. You know, folks with records and the lack of affordable housing has brought people to Skid Row. And, you know, really looking at gentrification factor, containment, you know, concentration. And this is what's happening on Skid Row. And really, you know, I just want to make mention of something, that we had a corrupt politician that represented Skid Row. Jose Huizar was named CD14. He was really promoting like bring back Broadway and attracting a whole lot of developers to come in and push the folk out, residents of Skid Row. Well, did you know something, that there was a proposed light rail in downtown, and this joker pocketed money, made deals with developers, and certain funds that were earmarked, you know, for Skid Row went into his pocket. And, you know, there's a lot of exploitation, you know, and these are a few things that I want to mention, that, you know, I'm very passionate about this work. You know, I'm a people's person. And when the cops come in, I witness, you know, a lack of sensitivity training, foul mouth, just talking to houseless folk, those that are disenfranchised, and like their lives don't matter. And that's not right. You know, just talking to them any kind of way, physically, you know, inflicting harm, you know, and these are the things that are happening, you know, on Skid Row. So I just want to briefly say these things, and thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Brother Pancake.
Say more, I know.
Thank you, Brother Pancake. So, you know, we really felt like it was important that everybody understood where we're situated. The coalition's office is located in Skid Row. One of our guiding principles is really, excuse me, is really understanding that we're grounded in human rights. And so when you don't have a home, you do not have the right to privacy. And so many fights are grounded in this privilege of privacy. So really our analysis begins in understanding that there are so many people that don't even have the right to privacy. We cannot begin to unpack the fight back against surveillance without understanding that. But now I'm going to turn back to Courtney, and we're really going to start to unravel predictive policing and really understand that what it's based on is this idea that crime is real, right? And we're going to get into that, and Courtney's going to kind of lay that out. But it's based on crime data. So what we're transitioning into is this idea of science driving police, right? This veneer of science that they are precisely getting the right person because it's based on data. So we're really going to unpack what that means. And I'm going to turn it back to Courtney. And Courtney, I'm going to bring up your slides right now, okay?
Yeah, so laser and predpol, which, as I mentioned, were the two predictive policing programs that LAPD was using. And as Jamie was just talking about, and as I previously mentioned, right, these programs rely on historic crime data, which is really a necessary element for any predictive policing program. However, right, we know that data is political, right? I mean, there exists both historically and currently, right? There exists this intention and this purpose of, you know, categorizing and documenting acts by certain communities as criminal, right? And crime is essentially it's created and it's enacted into law by those in power in order to serve their own interests. And as a result, right, crime data is really a reflection of law enforcement's responses to particular kinds of behaviors committed by certain subsets of the population, primarily, you know, Black, brown, poor communities. But what's really important, right? It's that crime data describes and reflects police behavior, not community behavior, right? And this also too, and explains at least in part why, for example, you know, lead poisoning or pollution are not, you know, deemed criminal, even though they're still harmful, right? But as a result, the legal system is biased, right? And the law is not impartially applied with regards to, you know, race, class, gender, sexuality. And then I think it's also important to point out too, right, that this dates back to the days of chattel slavery, when the legal system became the primary means through which whites could capitalize off of the forced labor of Black folks. You know, and this was made possible through discriminatory crime policies, such as, you know, laws that criminalize behavior, such as speaking too loudly to a white woman. And then, you know, even now, we know that less than half of all crime that is committed is actually known to police. And then two, studies indicate that Black people and whites commit crime at roughly the same rate, but police are twice as likely to intervene when it comes to Black folks than they are for whites. And then even here in Los Angeles, Jamie, if you want to go to the next slide, you know, Black people are more likely to be stopped by police. They're more likely to be frisked. You know, once they're stopped, they're more likely to have their vehicle searched. But in fact, we know that whites are actually more likely to be in possession of an illegal weapon, or to be in possession of drugs. And so these are just a few examples, right, of how crime data is not neutral, and how crime data is this social construct, right? And so again, crime data is really just this reflection of law enforcement responses to certain kinds of behavior by certain subsets of people, right? As opposed to a reflection of reality, right, or actual criminality. But when we say that crime is a social construct, what we're really saying too, right, and what we know to be true is that the data collected by police, it's political, it's biased, it's racist, it's based on policing, which is inherently racist, and no algorithm can change that. But also what this means too, and what we know to be true, is that predictive policing programs, or really any data-driven policing program, they're not just using this data to inform the policing of behaviors defined as criminal or defined as threatening, but they're really also using this data to police the boundaries between property ownership and people as property, and then also to really police the boundaries between life and death. And so I will stop there. I think Jamie's gonna jump in and explain a little more in that regard. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Courtney. So I'm going to get into kind of meshing now everything that everybody's been talking about. We've listened to Dogon, our General Dogon, and Brother Pancake speak about the poverty and the basic abandonment of people living in the community of Skid Row. We've heard about the terrorism of people that live in Skid Row. But now we're going to end. We've also heard of the stories of gentrification that's coming in, right? Of the redevelopment for the rich. Skid Row is located in the city center of Los Angeles. There's a clear divide between the new developing downtown and the community of Skid Row. And we're going to demonstrate how predictive policing enhances and how predictive policing manages the brutality and the terrorism of policing. And we're going to focus on an area that LAPD calls Central Division, which inherently houses, is a part of, and is the I guess how LAPD defines the Skid Row community. So I'm going to start with referring us back to Predpol. Now, what you're looking at right now is a density map of predictive policing hotspots that were created in Central Division, which is outlined by the red. So all this area right here is Central Division, right? This is all Central Division. And this is 6 months of hotspots. Now, going back to the story of Skid Row and what General Dogon was sharing with us, is that the history of containment of Skid Row has been a legacy, right? The idea of gentrifying and redeveloping downtown in the current history in the 1950s started in an area just west of Skid Row called Bunker Hill. And there were plenty of plans to begin to remove and displace people. And that's when we start to, in present day, really see the ordinance or the city laws and the police brutality and the sweeps begin. Because and it's so important for us to understand that the brutality that General Dogon and Brother Pancake talk about isn't something new. Predpol isn't designing new styles of brutality. They have always existed, right? But they're managing it and in a very sinister way, really dividing up the city in a way where you can see on a map. So the Skid Row, or as we were speaking about Predpol, it creates this feedback loop, right? You take crime data that we know, as Courtney said, is racist. We put it in the algorithm and, racist hotspots come out. But you see how Predpol is not necessarily mathematically driven, because the crime analyst who runs the predpol hotspot or the predpol algorithm can alter the maps and alter where officers go and what hotspots they want them to patrol. So they don't necessarily use where the hotspots are at. So going back to the story of Skid Row was historically known in this area where you see no hotspots. But this area around here was known as the buffer zones, was known as the area that they wanted to prevent people who did not have homes or who were poor from entering into. And like General Dogon mentioned, this area is where they put all the homeless shelters. This area is where they put all the social services. And this area is where they put all the free food, because they don't want you over here where development is happening. So then Courtney spoke about anchor points, the areas that are specifically targeted, right? And so now we're going to move into the program, the predictive policing program, Operation Laser, LA Strategic Extraction and Restoration. These blue dots are where anchor points were at. This particular area is all where poor people are housed. And what we're seeing right here is basically the downtown city center. And when you get down over here, this is where Skid Row is at. But this area is where now they're trying to force poor people out. So these blue spots all show single occupancy rooms that are in hotels where poor folk live. So those have been deemed anchor points. This area down here is where redevelopment is attempting to happen, where a high rise is attempting, with luxury lofts attempting to be built. So it's an anchor point where they're trying to be sure they push poor people away from that if they come near it. And so as one of our coalition members who couldn't be here, Tiff Guerra, who was strongly a part of this fight, mentions that these areas are areas of terrorism. This is where people are terrorized, and they're almost terrorized to the point where they don't want to go there. So imagine not wanting to go home. And this area down here is also an anchor point where single room occupancy hotels are as well, right? And again, like Courtney was saying, they use evictions to get people out, and they also search for chronic offenders, and they terrorize the community right there. So when we put them together, you know, what do they form, right? So you see the predpol, and these are predpol hotspots from 2018, right? The density maps. So this is where they're creating the buffer zone. And this is where you see the encroachment, where police are now pushing down into Skid Row. And what's important about this map, and the next map I'm going to show, in 2018, Los Angeles City proposed new rezoning of Skid Row, basically where they were containing poor people. Now they want to open up all that area to market rate housing. This is where they want to be able to basically, I'm so sorry, I need to just do something really quick. I think Hamid, you're on the thing. Can you bring me my charger? So this area right here is where they are pushing into Skid Row to basically get people out of that area. So when we look at laser zones right here, this is where now laser zones are pushing into Skid Row to basically put police in that area to push people out of that area. So this is laser zones that were established and proposed in 2018 at the same time when the new rezoning plans were being created. So now they're terrorizing communities and putting police in areas where they want to push people out. So this is how Operation Laser and predictive policing work in conjunction with gentrification and with terrorizing and banishing people. So I'm going to pass to General Dogon and Brother Pancake to talk about now what happens to people in those areas. What happens when we saw before the bullet hits the body, what happens now when they get you in those areas? So General Dogon, Brother Pancake, don't forget to unmute. And if you can tell us a little bit more of what the impact looks like in Skid Row.
Okay. All right, you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool, thank you. So as a organizer at LA Can, one of my job and roles is point man on our cop watch team. So for the last 16 years, my job is to go out around Skid Row and monitor and document interactions between LAPD, private security guard, law enforcement, and Skid Row residents, right? And I noticed early on, so when they launched the Safer Cities Initiative in 2005, it brought 110 extra police to Skid Row, making Skid Row the most police community, not only in America, but second in the world to Baghdad. So our community, like overnight, was parachuted in with all these cops, right? And so we had done what we call CompStat data, right? CompStat data shows that where part one crimes are at and happen around the city. Part one crimes are your real crimes, like murder, robbery, stuff like that, right? And so it's used to show where policing real, where crime is real happening and where policing should be pushed at. At the time, Skid Row was one of the lowest crime communities in the city. Of course, homelessness has a mean look, you know what I'm saying? But homelessness basically is a paper tiger, right? And so Skid Row had some of the lowest crime stats because it had the lowest crime in the whole city. But yet we had the majority of the cops, you know what I'm saying, was right there. So we was like, well, hell, you know what I'm saying, this don't make no sense, right? So so it came up to why would all these resources being used, you know what I'm saying, in an area, you know what I'm saying, where there's nothing going on, right? Because the city started policing poverty. They started racist, what we call racist policing, right? The idea they were supporting gentrification to move people out of the area, right? So all like what Jamie them is talking about, you know, the crime data collection, you know what I'm saying? It was all bootleg, you know what I'm saying? Because it was all lied, those false aphorisms, they was all fake. You know what I'm saying? The real shit, you know, was in the CompStat data to show where crime was really happening there. Right, and LAPD, you know what I'm saying, was overlooking these real data stats, but we knew this because we was doing cop watch, you know what I'm saying, we knew already that there was nothing going on in our community except for the police. They was doing the real murders, the real crime, because once they done labeled your community, you know what I'm saying, as a target for removal, then everything go, all game go, you know, everything is, you know, account. The police, the central division in my community, that police community is the most powerful police station that LAPD has. It's the only station that don't house weapons because of the sophistication of weapons that they have in there. They figured that if it's gonna be a terrorist attack that hit LA, you know, the terrorists is not gonna come to the projects in South Central or Compton or Watts. They're gonna attack downtown, the central area where all the money is at, right? So they built this big ass powerful police station to be able to respond to that, right? And so this police station sits right in the middle of this, you know, warehouse zone on Skid Row. And the policing that was coming out of here under the Safer Cities Initiative earned them the Meanest City Award for the worstest police station in America. I could sit there all day long, the New Year's, talk about all the do-lo dirty tactics that this city did to move poor and Black people out of downtown. You know what I'm saying? Everything, the first year of the initiative, they had wrote over 13,000 citations, you know what I'm saying, in a community of only 13,000 people. And they had made over 11,000 arrests in a community of only 13,000 people. The first 3 years of the initiative, they had rolled over 36,000 citations and made over 27,000 arrests within a 15-block area, right? And this was policing on steroids because Central Division broke all kind of records. They broke so many records that the National Law Center on Homeless and Poverty does what they call a Meanest City Award, where they research America for the worstest police station in America. Not only did Central Division win the award, but broke all records from all previous winners, right? So they became the all-time criminalizers of all time right here on Skid Row. And so, just like I say, at this point, you and your voice in your community don't matter. What you say don't matter. Your opinions don't matter. You know why it don't matter? Because you don't matter. We don't even want you here. You know what I'm saying? And so tactics like what they did to my brother O'Connor, which was a homeless man, right? That they called him Monkey Man, because every time because he liked climbing on buildings, and every time the police would come and criminalize his spot, he would climb on top of the roof and sit on the roof, and he won't come down until the police leave, right? And so one day the police, the man is unarmed, he don't have anything, right? Instead of them calling a social worker, a mental health worker to come talk him down, they call SWAT. SWAT stands for Special Weapons and Attack Team. They are a murder assassination team. You don't call them if it's something that's just minor social. You don't call them because somebody's having a mental health episode. You know what I mean? You don't call murderers out, for a non-violent situation, right? And so to make a long story short, they said they shot him to save him. They shot him off the side of the building. The tactic was to put this blow-up balloon on the side of the building, and then call him over with a pack of cigarettes, and when he stick his head out, shoot him, hopefully he'll fall off the side of the building. Yeah, he fell off the side of the building, all right head first on the concrete, right? Another woman, another person, Ann Moody, the most criminalized person on Skid Row, arrested 108 times, middle-aged Muslims woman, don't do nothing but just read the Quran, sit on the ground all day, praying to Allah. Arrested 108 times for sitting on the city of Los Angeles for not having anywhere to go, right? It's story after story, like my brother Charlie Africa, approached in his tent, had nowhere to go, sleeping on a tent, an immigrant from Africa, right? Sleeping on Skid Row, approached by 5 cops, right? Just a conversation, right? The conversation end up to where they end up slamming this man on the ground, right, and hit me 5 times in the chest. Unarmed man, shot, broad daylight, in front of the whole world. The same people, the same cops that shot him, a week later is still walking around doing tent checks, right? And so this is the respect that we get. This is the level of treatment we got, when you're the X factor. Let me say it that way, all right? I just, like I say, I could talk all the way to New Year's, so I'm gonna pass the mic to my brother Pancake and let him get something.
General Dogon, there is something known as the dirty divide. And I'd just like to speak on that east of Maine, west of Maine. And east of Maine, Skid Row, the lack of receptacles to put your trash in, just loitering. The cops, it's just citation, they give you a ticket. And, no facilities, to use the restroom, lack of facilities there. And this is in Skid Row. These are the things that are happening. And areas being Skid Row being neglected, underrepresented. But I'll tell you this, that when they push back, we fight back. We are ourselves, like Dogon said, we got we document, everything stops. Everywhere that there's a stop in Skid Row, I have my cell phone ready. I listen to conversation. I intervene. I watch them. There are times now when they see, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, when they see me coming, oh, here he comes. Here he comes there. I know the law. I know the law. I know the letter there. The approaches, taking advantage of houses, especially our young folks. They want to inflict fear in them, and even driving. Some of our young folks driving, there's a cop car, telling them, and inflicting fear in them and, unjustified stops, and that is just, it's not right. So, again, when they push back, we fight back. We equip ourselves, we do our homework, and this is how we do it. And the impact of, I want to say again about the criminal justice system. We talk about that reforming, they building more the private sector, prisons, more prisons is not the answer. More prisons are not the answer.
That's right.
State of mind, and when folks, they're, like I said, the revolving door, the prison industrial complex. And of course, when folks release, then, where do they go first? Where do they end up first? Right in Skid Row. And, I want to say something too that, when it's not a good feeling to make one step forward and two steps backwards. And that's what the system has done. Like homeless folks, like Dogon was saying, the sweeps, folks, they lose all their property, they lose, their important documents and such. And, it's a lot of tactics, that are used, by the cops. They're out on the front lines. There it's them. And so again, when they push back, we fight back. All power to the people. Ashe.
Ashe. So we're going to close in just 3 minutes, and we're going to talk about coming back to just kind of this understanding of the fight back that General Dogon was speaking about in Community Watch, and how we watch the police, we organize against the police, we expose the police to kind of further this movement towards abolition, towards the complete abolishment of policing as it is nationwide in the United States, but internationally as well, including the military industrial complex. I'm going to pass to Courtney, and they're going to briefly kind of explain and kind of tell you the end story of PredPol and Operation Laser and the multiple ways that we fought back.
Thanks, Jamie. Do you mind sharing the slideshow? Thanks. So in 2016, we began holding monthly public meetings filled with community members, many who were residents of Skid Row. And at these meetings, we discussed these programs, right? PredPol, Laser. And we actually spent several meetings just really learning together what even predictive policing is, right? We would, for example, break into groups, read through articles that we had just found on the internet about predictive policing, about PredPol, about Laser. And then we'd break into groups, read these articles, come back together, discuss them. And then through these conversations, we collectively, decided what is it that we want to know about these programs? What questions do we have? What remains unanswered? And so based on questions that community members came up with or additional information folks wanted to know about these programs, we collectively crafted and filed a Public Records Act request in order to gain access to LAPD records regarding these specific things that we were interested in learning more about as it relates to their predictive policing programs. And so an example of one of those public record requests is what you see here on the screen. And then also too, I think it's important to note as well, that it was just really important to us that this process, the crafting of the request, determining our next steps. It was really important to us that this be a community-driven process, that it's the community making the decisions, drafting the reports, drafting the requests, And even so much as like what legal arguments we were going to make during our lawsuit. But then, so in May of 2017, we filed the request regarding Operation Laser, seeking information about the chronic offender bulletins, about the laser zones. And so through the documents we received in response to our request, we uncovered a number of things. Jamie, if you mind going to the next slide. But perhaps, the most devastating component of our findings was the fact that several murders committed by LAPD were found to have occurred in areas that they had labeled as laser zones at the time of the murder. And therefore, these areas were being targeted by LAPD for additional surveillance. And just some of the lives stolen in laser zones include Jesse Romero, Richard Richer, Kenny Watkins, Keith Bursey, Daniel Perez, Grishario Mack, Robert Diaz. And again, that's just what we've uncovered thus far, but there's certainly many, many more. But essentially through the information that we received, or that we forced LAPD to provide, we use that information uncovered during the course of the lawsuit through these requests. We were able to expose the LAPD's, violent targeting of individuals, of community, of communities, of entire neighborhoods. And then through that, we were able to eventually force the dismantlement of both the laser program and Predpol after, again, this started back in 2016 and laser was dismantled in 2019 after a lawsuit that we had successfully won against LAPD for violating the Public Records Act. And then through also the dismantlement occurred after as well the release of our community-based report before the bullet hits the body. But also too, right, through this fight, we were able to expose the true nature of these programs, right, as this capitalistic tool to, advance white supremacy and white profiteering off of Black communities. But also, again, it was really important to us that in this process, right, that this be a community-driven process. And so I think really the biggest success was the culture of resistance that was further cultivated through this process. People really felt empowered, and so really the biggest win was community empowerment.
So I really want to thank everybody for sharing time with us. I know there was a lot to talk about, but it was really important to bring it all into context and to really talk about not only how these programs are created, how they are pseudoscience, how they map out our communities, how they manage and target people. And really the important thing is to understand is this legitimization. We talked about data mining, behavioral surveillance. We saw the maps. We saw the chronic offenders. And LAPD is currently still trying to promote this type of policing internationally and locally as well. So, and they use it as data-driven policing with offender-based components, with location-based components, all trying to make it sound legitimate because it's crime data. And so we really fought back. And honestly, the legal angles were there. The advocacy was there, but it was really the fact that the community pressure was on. In fact, in our very last action before the complete dismantlement of Operation Laser, we went to Central Station, which Dogon spoke about being the most armed station in the city of Los Angeles. And we walked into the station and we demanded the list of all the chronic offenders. We chanted inside of the station. We drug the sergeant out of the station and we had him answer to the community. And then when we told him to F off, we lit a fire and we were in a bonfire in front of Central Station. We broke bread, we ate, and we sang and we shared story. and held that space. So that is something that's really important. Like Courtney was saying, it was building the culture of resistance, because the road to abolition is multi-generational, but it's these stories that we share that will get us there. So thank you so, so much for all your time. And I'll turn it back to Bill.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you, huge thank you to everyone for sharing your stories and your campaigns and your experiences, really, which hearing them has been a really humbling experience for me. And I cannot even start to imagine what it means to live in a neighborhood that is under police invasion, and what it does to your mental health, and what it does to your loved ones, what it does to your hopes for the future. And it's also really revealing to be seeing the correlation between racial policing and racial capitalism. I mean, it's quite extraordinary to see how the gentrification program is working, how this oscillation between policing and different types of oppression works in order to gentrify parts of the city center of Los Angeles and make developers profit from it. And it's really interesting, and also I think very relevant to certain aspects of what has been happening for many years now in Athens, because the city center of Athens finds itself into a very similar situation in terms of the oscillation between different types of police behavior, which leads people out of the city center and it leaves buildings empty so that they lose value for a certain period of time. And now what we have been seeing is that we have a new phase in the process of gentrification, where big developers are coming and buying very, very cheaply all those buildings or pieces of land and redeveloping them. So there are really interesting parallels, because actually many of those areas in the center of Athens had been occupied by refugees, by migrants. We had the refugee crisis, and which actually continues over the last many years, actually. So we can see parallels in terms of how different mechanisms of power are looking at the city and manipulating the way in which policing is functioning in order to lead to profit, to lead to this neoliberal model of thinking about the city, thinking about the neighborhoods, thinking about, in the end, about communities and people, looking at them as expendable, completely expendable in the context of producing profit. So once again, I would like to say huge thank you to all of you. Huge thank you to the coalition for our collaboration. And I really feel that the people in Athens, the communities in the city center, particularly of Athens, will learn a lot on the one hand, but also they're going to be looking at a lot of things that they have taken for granted in a different light, through the work, and also through visiting all the material online. And as I said, the last photo that I showed with the children playing on the over the algorithm is, in a way, on the one hand, it can be seen as a very scary picture, in the sense that it's something that exists all the time. You can ignore it, but it's always there, just like algorithmic policing and the role of surveillance in our labs. But at the same time, even if a few of those children or a few of the visitors are able to get educated and understand the complexities and the dangers behind this type of activities, then I think it will be a huge benefit to the communities in Athens, but also to the whole country, and hopefully through the internet for a much wider audience. So thank you very much once more.